India, and the ISB came out on top of it. Then that's why I chose to join ISB. So that was my story. I mean, right from the time that I have done my this thing, right, things have changed dramatically, not in terms of, but way I see things, way I do things, right? I mean, nothing's given me a completely different perspective of way I look at things and way I do things.
Sure. Sure, Anand. Thank you so much for briefing us on that. Abhishek, over to you. What made you choose the PGPMAX program, and how did everything change after it?
Sure, Smriti. So in my case, actually, I evaluated a whole bunch of programs, Ellipse, Gamba from NCR and so on. And finally I chose ISB because I decided that, I wanted to stay in India, stick around in India. And more importantly, I've been an entrepreneur earlier, right? So I played both sides of the aisle, so to say. I've been an entrepreneur as well as I've been in large corporates. So I wanted to understand more about, what it takes to sort of, fill the gap which I had, in my career progression from an education standpoint, connect with some of the best faculties in the world, and I heard about a whole bunch of them, and I realized that they're all part of the program. But more importantly, I think the reason why I chose ISB is because, when I talked to a whole bunch of programs, and I did attend some of the programs like these, right? And they were all offline programs back then. And I realized that there's something in common, when it comes to the alums and me, right? There's some sort of chemistry is something I could sort of connect with. So I decided that this makes sense, and that's the reason why I chose the program.
Sure. Sure, Abhishek. Thank you so much. So we have Ritu here today. Ritu, hi and thank you for joining in. And guys, we have Ritu here today, who is our alum. So before we go on to the next question, Ritu, we would like to, hear a little introduction about you before we move on. You're on mute, Ritu.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I am Ritu Kaul. I'm from the class of 2017. I am currently based in US. I head marketing for an IT firm called Callens. We're based out of California. So that's a brief introduction about myself. I think I'm one of the few ones who joined as an entrepreneur and went on to do a corporate journey. Whereas I remember most of my batchmates, most of them actually had ideas. They wanted to take the journey of entrepreneurship. And I think ISB and the course helped them to do that, specifically because I think when you're an entrepreneur, you're dealing with just not your function, but you're really running a company. You need to know from finance to marketing to obviously also looking at business models differently. So I think people have had those journeys. I feel all of us, and I can say that for my entire batch, I think everybody who wants to do a mid-career MBA, there is definitely always something in mind that you want to accomplish or achieve. And you feel that, what you're today, how you're today, it will not take you to that point. There is an intervention that you require. And that intervention might not be only a mid-career MBA, it could be many things. But I think I can say that for most of the people I interacted with, that, people wanted to change industries. They felt that they were hitting a glass ceiling, and, for their next 10 years or 15 years of their career, they felt that, if they didn't do something different now to transform themselves or have a worldview, it will not happen. So my journey was similar. I was new to entrepreneurship at that time. I had done a bunch of things, but I had been in marketing for a very long time. And I think as a marketer, I felt very constrained on two aspects. I always felt that, I don't know enough about finance, for instance, and I don't know enough about operations, for instance. I had tried earlier in my career moving to a shorter stint in operations, and somehow I didn't get that opportunity. I continued to work in marketing. And I think what the course did for me is, there were some 100 case studies I remember. And from, supply chain to operations to finance, and they're very in-depth, and the discussions are very intense in a classroom. And I think, that's the biggest learning. You sit there, you go through people's point of views, you have professors who are aiding and moderating those discussions. And I can tell you, you can spend 10 or 15 years in a corporate. Most of us, what happens is we spend our lifetime, interacting with people in the same industry or same function. In our personal lives, it's known, right? You get along or socialize with people who are more similar like you. So, there are very few times in your life that you'll be thrown in a place where people are so different from you. And I think the learning and the growth and the transformation really starts there, because you're suddenly thrown into this world of, 60 more people or 55 more people who've had a very different journey than you. You spend 15 months together, working day and night, because that's what happens. Time is always less, and it's a very intensive course. And I think the greatest learning happens from some of those things, I would say, for people who've had the work experience. It's not so much of bookish theory and structures, but it's a lot of knowing about more industries, functions, interacting with people from different industries, seeing how they are solving their problems, and you can certainly apply that to yours. I've been a consultant for a long time. And one of the things that I always hear from my clients is the fact that, I bring in a lot of depth from different industries, and people say that I'm able to connect the dots very well. And I can tell you that was not something that I had before before I went through this course. And that's only come from the worldview of things that I have heard in the class, the discussions I've had with my classmates, whether it's from finance industries, whether it's from I was not from a technology industry at that time. And I think it's helped me do whatever I have navigated post the MBA. It's given me the confidence. It's given me more than the confidence, it's given me a way to apply, myself to different business situations. So in brief, that's been my journey. Over to you, Smriti.
Thank you, Ritu. Thank you for the lovely introduction and a very apt answer to my question. So before I move on to the next question, I have this question. Okay, yeah. So, Anand, I would like to start with you now. So, what are the biggest takeaways from the PGPMAX program that you had? In fact, if you could name the two biggest takeaways.
When I came in, you had this. When I had done a lot of stuff in Wipro, and you had this confidence that what you do is great, right? But when you go to PGPMAX, you really realize that there are so many people who are out there who are 100x smarter than you, right? Better than, right? So one, it grounds you in the sense that there is a lot of smart people out there. The best way to get this out of them is to work together. So that is a huge transformation that I had. Second thing, it gives you a different perspective, right? Normally if you're 10, 15 years in a company, right, you are looking at things in a very narrow way, right? You don't look at what is the financial impact of it, what is the marketing impact of things, how do marketing look at it, how do operations look at it, right? It gives you a holistic view. And it gives you a sense that there is more than one right way to look at things, and different stakeholders who come and look at it from that perspective, right? And the fact that you are working with people, different skill set, they bring in all those experience, right? It sort of trains you to look at things differently. I think that is the most important thing. I see that that I've learned to look at things at multiple this thing, right? And that's our biggest learning. And that comes from your peers, who are smarter, some of the smartest people, in the industry today, and across industries, not just one, right? So they are the fortunate of, I have friends across some 15, 16 industries, who've been at GMs and bigger levels, right? So they bring in a different flavor. That's what you learn a bit about PGPMAX.
Sure. Thank you, Anand. Over to you, Abhishek. If you could name the few takeaways that you had from the program.
Smriti. I think, see, over the course of, few years, you'll possibly forget all the case studies you've done, right? You'll possibly forget, what was being taught in the class from a conceptual standpoint. But I think what will stay with you, and what at least it's been an experience on with me, I think the biggest takeaway is the friends you'll make for life, right? For example, I was just talking to a fellow classmate today morning, who is also a fellow entrepreneur. He's also running a company. I'm also running a company, right? So we sort of exchange notes. But people say you make best friends when you're in school or you're in college and so on, right? I think I made my best friends when I was in the program. And it's that friendship is not just a surface level friendship, so to say, or I think that relationship essentially goes much deeper. We meet, our families sort of know each other. We catch up, we hang out, we share our experiences, learnings. I think that's the biggest takeaway. I mean, because you'll connect with people who are essentially you will share the same wavelength with, right? Like, what's that wavelength? Broadly speaking, a wavelength is essentially classified. It has two dimensions to it in my experience. Like, one is that people who are hungry for learning, right? People who continue to sort of want to learn continuously, right? Otherwise, nobody will essentially take this giant leap of faith to join a program this extensive for and give them like almost 1.5 to 2 years of their life. And secondly, all the immersions, the time you spend in the US, the memories you make. I think that's the biggest takeaway, frankly. I honestly don't remember. I was not good in academics, while in college, while in school, while in PGPMAX. I don't remember. I barely scraped through the surface, honestly, even in the program. But the friends who helped me, in passing through the program, plus all the memories I've made, I think that's the biggest takeaway, honestly. And there is no second takeaway. That is the takeaway. And I think that takeaway is something which I'm very, very happy with.
Thank you, Abhishek. And in fact, that has been the unanimous takeaway that I get to hear from the alums, that the friends that you make are for life. So amazing. So the next question that I have, probably we can start with Ritu. So, PGPMAX is a huge investment of finances, in your career. So
Right.
what do you think has been your ROI for the program, or how would you define the ROI from the program?
So before I answer that question, let me tell you that that's a universal question. Debated till the cows came home in our batch as well, from the start to the end, what's the ROI? And I think I've been the only few ones, at least in my batch, I remember saying that the ROI is, I mean, it's an investment in yourself. And I would urge anyone who says that, and people do look at ROI in pure financial terms, that what prompted you to actually apply for the course, right? Even the people who are on the webinar today, there is something that must have prompted them to start exploring that. And I would say that that's a very good sign, because they've recognized that there is an ambition, there's a dream, but they've also recognized that they need to change something around their circumstances or where they are, and what will take them to the next point. And that's the first step. And I would say the ROI is really the transformation that you get within yourself. In my case, I think I felt that I had kind of a freedom to move anywhere that I want to, in terms of industries, in terms of moving back to corporate, in terms of I'm now in the US. I don't think if I hadn't done the course, I didn't have the world view, it would have really changed my mind to say, I would say that, I probably will continue to do what I do because I do this best. And believe you me, that's a big change in self-talk that has happened, really. And, looking at newer challenges and saying that, yes, I can do it, right? So I think the ROI is really the transformation in yourself, and you probably will not feel it. And I totally agree with Abhishek when he says that you will really not remember even a single case study or what you were taught in the class. It's not that you go out of an MBA program and you start quickly, relating, today I have this problem, I did that case study, and now bang, it's there. Neither does the world start looking at you differently suddenly. You expect that after those 15 months, I will now move on to my next job, or I will now get a promotion because, I'm now an MBA, I've now got the, the degree, the brand. It happens over a period of time, and you will see the difference coming in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, and hopefully later than that. And I would say that that's the ROI, that's the investment you make in yourself, that's the change that happens in yourself. It kind of opens a door from here where you're able to walk further, versus before, if you are feeling that, I don't know how to make it to that point, or I think this is a closed door, I don't know how to open it. And going back to Abhishek's point on the friendships, of course, the friendships are beautiful. They are great. And, by the way, nothing changes from when you've done really college at 17 or 18 to when you do it now. It's the same friendships. You relive those moments. It's the same thing. Your friends pull you up. You suddenly have a quiz or a test or an assignment which you're not able to do. And, they're really, really pitch in. But I think that friendship is also a very strong network that you build for life. Now, here you have 50 or 60 people from different industries, from different functions. And, it's so easy to reach out to anybody, even after 10 years. Your batchmates would actually never say that they are busy, never not connect you to people that you want to be connected to. So I think it also, and people undermine the power of a network. And networking is not somebody you meet at a conference, you say hello, hi, and you reach out to them. Networking is really the bond that you create, and that people are willing to help you, advise you when you need that help, and you feel free to reach out to them. They make out time for yourself. So I would say, that's really how you should look at an ROI, versus people always measure ROI in terms of a CTC change, and it won't happen. If that's something that people are doing immediately after, 1.5 years, that will dramatically change my situation. No, but it will change your situation. It will change you as a person post the MBA.
Sure. Thank you, Ritu. That's a wonderful take on the ROI that you have. Anand, over to you. How would you define your ROI after the program?
I mean, I never thought in terms of ROI, but I can tell you this. When I took it, I did take a loan for the entire, the money that I did, but not even a single day I've regretted taking that loan. I think it's been one of the best well spent money that I've done so far, investment that I've done so far in my life. Um, I think the way to look at it is like, as Ritu and Abhishek said, right? You're not going to remember any of those stuff, right? But what you're going to remember is a set of friends that you make for life, whom you call any time in the day to say that I have this problem, help me, right? So one thing that has really happened is you lose that fear, right? I mean, you can reach out to anybody in this country, outside this country, whenever you want to, because you have alums. And I have never seen an alum, who has said that, that they will not help me. I think the first thing you introduce that you are an alum of this thing. I think there is this friendship, camaraderie, right? And you are them, like one of the family members, right? So that's a huge thing, for at a level when you are at a place, not all problems, like a lot of people have solved the problems, right? For example, let's say I want to know something in healthcare from how does it work, right? I just call up my friends, who is VP there, right? And ask him how does it work. I mean, you have the entire, he will give you an entire download on how that industry works. Right? So, I mean, that is the power of that particular network, right? And I mean, imagine again this, right? Being friends with, and people who come there, right, are typically at their GMs and that level, right? So you're going to be working with people, some of the smartest people who would be CEOs in the next 6-7 years, right? I mean, there is no better way to look at it than that, right? And those things can't be quantified with money. I mean, it's. I mean, how do you quantify friendship with money? I mean, how do you quantify the time you spend? I mean, as again Ritu said, right? That's the best time of my life. It was crunch situation. You don't have time for anything. You're juggling 3-4 things. Your job, family, right? This class at all the same time, but having fun, right? And I mean, frankly speaking, all of us, batchmate had withdrawal symptoms, right? After you finish your PGPMAX, you have so much time in your hand, right? You don't know what to do with this. So those things can't be quantified. And the only thing I can say is that I never regretted, going to PG.
Thank you so much, Anand. And yes, this again, has been wonderful to hear from you, because again, I have heard this from a lot of alums that, the course is rigorous, and it makes you spend a lot of time into the case studies that you do, and, spend a lot of time and effort into the program, that once you finish the program, it's really difficult to understand what you do with the rest of the time that you have in your hands, which earlier you were, involved in the program. So thank you for bringing that up, Anand. Over to you, Abhishek, since you started on the entrepreneurial journey recently. So, how would you define your ROI here?
Sure, Smriti, thanks. it's a very consistent question. Like, time and again, this conversation comes up. And frankly speaking, even in our, batch reunion, this conversation comes up. It's been 6, 7 years. What's the ROI, right? Well, the way I put it, I think ROI can be sort of looked at in two possible dimensions, right? One is money, one is time, right? Like, will I make enough money so that I cover up for whatever 30, 40, God knows what's the fees today is. But let me just honestly tell you, right? I mean, there are 42 people, which I'm assuming were essentially considering the program. So I can be very honest with you, right? So I still remember there was a last day to pay the first, the fee. It was, and I don't know what the fee is today. I think it was 7 lakh rupees, which was supposed to be paid. In my account, I had 7,25,000 rupees, and that fee was like non-refundable, right? So I still remember I was sitting in Bombay airport, and I decided to take the plunge. I thought before pressing, that button which said transfer money, it took me about 3 odd hours to decide whether to or not to, in that sense, right? And I decided, I'm glad I took the plunge. And I pushed the program, by the way, for a year because of the financial decision whether to take it, not take it, right? So I spent considerable amount of time and energy into thinking through. But I can honestly tell you, it's the best investment I've made. Right now, coming to this time, right? Like, I had just joined a job. I was, it was like 15 days into the job when the program got started, right? So considerable time and energy had to go establishing myself in the new job, at the same time doing the program, right? So considerable sort of stress on the time, considerable stress on the money. If you ask me today, right, like, it's been what, 7 odd years, so Abhishek, what's the ROI? I didn't have answer then. I don't have that answer today. I really don't know. I can't answer that question. What I can tell you for sure is, both from money and time concentration standpoint, I'm an entrepreneur today, starting a professional networking platform, right? Like, so which basically means that we are all about connecting people with each other, right? So, I live it deep inside my veins, right? Like, connecting with people. So, so some of my investors are my batchmates. Honestly speaking, they had no idea what I was starting, like, no clue. Forget them, even I had no idea. When I started, we wanted to do something entirely different, and it ended up taking a different shape. They said, okay, if you are starting it, we know you, there's a very high degree of comfort. Hey, here's the check, go ahead, do it, right? Didn't blink, didn't ask any questions, didn't say no. In fact, on the contrary, a lot of people reached out to me later on that, why didn't you ask me? I also could have, sort of put in money. So I don't know how to answer that question. I really don't know. I don't know what's the ROI. What I can tell you is that I loved it. I love it even today, even been, it's been 7 odd years, and I'll continue to, cherish it. Now, moment somebody says Hyderabad, I have so many memories, or, even US, there's so many memories I have, which I think is more than enough. You don't really need ROI, to calculate, like, mentally, we say, I've spent this much I've gained, and hence the ROI is 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, whatever it is, right? Don't think like that. I don't think it make any sense to evaluate this program from that lens, right? What you will get are, all soft factors, like, friendship, memories. That's the ROI. There's no financial ROI. I don't think there's any time bound ROI. I don't know how to answer that question. And I still feel that, those soft things, which, or the experiences and the memories you make in the due course, is what will stay with you. That's the ROI, if at all.
Sure. Thank you, Abhishek, for summarizing it perfectly. Either you define the ROI in terms of money, or you define it in terms of the time invested. So, which takes me to the next question. That it takes a lot of effort in terms of time to go through the program. It's a 15-month program where you have to juggle between your work and your professional life and the program in between. So how did you strike a balance between all the three aspects? Maybe we can start with Ritu again.
Yes, good question. It is very challenging. In fact, like Abhishek was thinking in terms of whether to make that investment in terms of the money. For me, I think the time was a bigger one because I was a co-founder for a startup back then. So, and you know what happens in a startup. You don't have the luxury of teams and you're pretty much doing, you know, everything from A to Z on your own. B, I had a young daughter at that time. You know, I think it took me time to understand how I will take out that time. I think my question to most of the people was, and I think most women face this, I would say, and I think my question to everybody I spoke to, I reached out to a lot of people who had done this course, was that how rigorous is it? And, you know, how did you guys take out time and, you know, stuff like that. And I think what I heard from everybody gave me a little bit of reassurance. Nobody said it was easy. Nobody said that it's not rigorous, but people said, you know, it's like a treadmill. Once you're in it and you come out on the other side, you know, there are no sort of, you got get onto the treadmill and you move with that speed. And I think I took leap of faith basis that, and it was very challenging, but I think few things that, you know, one has to do, and I specifically did, is that you plan for it. You know, I planned for it at my work. I planned for it at my home. In fact, I was in Bangalore when I signed up for ISB, and I moved back to Delhi, Gurgaon. You know, it's my hometown. And a lot of people ask me that, you know, ISP is in Hyderabad, you're in Bangalore. Why are you going to Delhi, you know, when you signed up for the course? But I went back because, you know, I had a huge backup of family and friends there. Bangalore was new to me. I'd moved 3 years back, sorry. Didn't have the infrastructure to have somebody around when, you know, I'm traveling and my daughter is home. And at that time, my spouse also had a highly traveling job. So we really had to plan for it. We really had to make those changes in our lives for the 15 months to say, you know, if one has to take out time, then, you know, you have to figure out how much time, you know, when you're not at work, how do you manage that? And how do you manage responsibilities at home, especially a young child? And that's the way I took out time. And, you know, you get better at it. It was very difficult in the first month. I would say the toughest two courses are, I think, the toughest one course is, I think, the first one, right? It's like somebody wants to really wake you up. I remember the DMUU, which is a stats course, extremely challenging. So what happens is when you put somebody on in those circumstances, you know, people learn, people adapt, and people move on. So I think what happens is once you're in it, and I think one part of it is that because it's your desire to do the course, you called it upon yourself to be in this situation where now you're adding more, you know, more time pressures to yourself, but it's something that you really, really, really wanted to do. B, you really enjoy doing it, even though it's hard and everything else. Just the fact that you're back to school is such an exhilarating feeling, you know, mid-career. And as I said, you know, nothing changes. Campus is campus, whether 20 years back or, you know, at 40 something that you do it. And I think that allows you to kind of go on because it's your desire. You see others doing it. You see the positive environment, you know, and you're learning, right? That keeps you going. So it is challenging, but you figure out. I remember that, you know, we were expected to obviously, and I was one of those few sincere ones who would read every case study before landing onto the campus. So, you know, whatever time you got in the night, I remember I was at my daughter's PTM one day, and I always used to carry I used to always take printouts of the course material, not very good with sort of reading on the laptop, that kind of a volume. And I remember, you know, we had to meet some 6 subject teachers, and there was a line outside every class. Well, guess what I was doing in the line? I was just taking out my case study, sitting in a corner and reading till the time our turn came. So, you know, you also make time for it in the pockets that you have during the day, or, you know, whatever else you're doing. And that's how, and I cut on all my social commit. So you have to cut down, you have to make these provisions, and, you know, that's how you do it. I mean, people do it in different ways. I'm sure everybody's situation is different, you know, work situation, home situation, and other things. But I think you have to tell yourself that you have to make that time commitment for 15 months. right? And that's how you do it. So that's been my experience on how I sort of waded through it.
Sure. Thank you, Ritu. That's quite a reassurance that eventually we will get through it.
It works
does
out.
happen, right? Right. Over to you, Anand. How did you? It must have been equally difficult for you to, and Abhishek, for you to manage the program along with the family commitments and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I had actually shifted to new jobs and I joined the LP course. I was moved from Wipro to Intel. I joined a month before that. We were expecting our second child. I was in Delhi, right, shuttling around. So it's a huge commitment, right? And the good part is, in every stage of your interview application, they keep asking you, do you aware of the kind of commitment that you have to do, right? Do you think you can manage? But as Ritu said, DMMU, when you do that, it hits you, right? It shows you what really they were saying and what you completely underestimated, right? But it's like this, you come out, right? I mean, you learn to manage all these things. I think that's been it's about planning. It's about deciding what you want to do, what you don't want to do. Most important thing, the many things that you need. I mean, you were doing that you can't do, right? And then you got to make that plan, and then you got to do that, right? But I mean, most of the people who do, right, get used to it, right? I mean, I was struggling till the last moment to do it, but it is in a fun way, right? I mean, you get used to it. You do scramble to do things, right? Just like you do everything at the last minute, right? So yeah, it was fun in a nice way, but yeah, it is not easy. It is not easy at all, right, for you to manage so many things, right? And thankfully, the employees were good. They understood, right? So that's more. I mean, in my case, I think it's important to make your employees, if you're working in corporate, understand that you will be off those 1 week of every 6 months. You with 6 weeks you can't be reached, right? I mean, I think they need to understand that, So I think that was critical. I mean, and luckily for me, right? And I think my employees, let me alone for that particular week. I would finish all my, requirements, the previous thing and do things. So I think that's important, and that helped me a lot.
Sure. Thank you, Anand. So over to you, Abhishek. How did you manage everything with the program?
But before I answer that question, Ritu Araran reminded me of DMU. That was quite a shocker. You suddenly, as if you hit the ground. So, well, I think the simplistic answer is you'll figure it out. It's not, it sounds very tough. It sounds as if, it's very earth shattering. How will we do it? But we don't realize how much perseverance, all of us have, right? Like, it's deep inside our veins. I think you will figure it out. It's not that difficult. Crisis will happen in office. You will have to cope up. And I still remember, like, something happened in the office and I was in middle of a class or a test or something that I had to rush. I sat in the library, resolved whatever I had to resolve over email, came back again, joined the course again. One of my batchmate, I used to take 12 o'clock flight. He used to take 4 o'clock flight. He said, no way you're going to sit on the 12 o'clock flight. Make sure to take the 4 o'clock flight because so that I can teach you, in the plane, because otherwise you'll not clear your exam. He was so confident that he almost knew that there's no way I can clear DMUU. so he said, I don't care. And this is literally like what, maybe 15 days or maybe a month into the program, he realized that there's no way Abhishek can crack this, right? So he said, I don't care. You are gonna come with me. The 2.5 hour flight. I'll make sure I teach you. Not that I sort of paid too much attention to it. I still sort of, barely scraped through the DMU exam, but guys, you'll figure it out. It's not, just go with the flow. You don't know how much, what degree of perseverance all of us have. We will figure it out.
Sure. Thank you, Abhishek, for taking us to the DMUU nostalgia of the PGPMAX program. Thank you so much for answering my set of questions about the program, about a journey. So audience, now I am opening it up for Q&A. If you have any questions to our panelists, you can put it up in the Q&A box or the chat box, and I'll take it up one by one to our panelists. So the first set of questions that I have probably for all of you today is a person is asking, I have 19 years of experience and I've done MBA 19 years back from a decent college in India, worked in sales, marketing, and as a business head in large organizations, and also headed a startup. How will this program be helpful in elevating the career apart from learning? So probably any of you can take it up, Ritu, Abhishek, and Anand.
I mean, it actually depends on what is he expecting out of it. I mean, if you've done something 19 years back, right? I mean, we need to be very clear on why you want to do this program, right? I think there are a set of things that ISB offers, right? One is great profs. I mean, I think the best, some of the best in the world come and teach here, right? There's a lot of access to, the alumni and also, other materials. And ISB is great at research, So I think it depends on what the person is wanting to do, what specific kind of skill sets they're trying to improve, right? It will depend on that.
Sure. Ritu, Abhishek, would you like to add to that?
I would like to say that the fact that somebody is considering an intervention or doing something differently after 19 years means that, they're facing a challenge, or even if they're not facing a challenge, they're planning for the next 10 years, 15 years of their work life and saying that, this is where I want to go. How can I reach there, right? So I think it boils down to what are you looking at this point in time? What are your challenges? What are your goals? How are you going about working around those, right? And planning for those. And if in that scheme of things, you feel that there is some skill set that you require, there is networking, or there is mid-career MBA, because, and this is a global program. So, and you require those perspectives, that is when you should take that decision. And as I said, this whole program is about transformation and growth, right? When you're mid-career. So if you're looking at, how do I want to grow? How do I want to do my next set of things? That's how you should evaluate the program.
Sure. Thank you, Ritu. So I have a next question. How did you all manage to talk to your organization and get an approval for doing the program, since it requires 1 week of your time off from the work that you're doing? So how did you manage these conversations with your employer, and any tips for our attendees to do that? Probably Anand, if you can share.
I mean, typically most MNCs, actually, have a very positive about, when somebody comes and tells them that, they want to go into an MBA and equip themselves, right? Especially in the case where, you're not asking for any funding, right? I think at least when I was in Wipro, it was looked at very positively. I think it's about giving reassurance to your managers that, that whatever that week that you're not there, how are you going to cope that up, right? And it's largely a manager, employee conversation, right? And many of in our batches have done that. They managed it, right? So I'm sure, people will be able to do that.
Thank you. How about you, Abhishek? How did you manage this conversation with your employer?
Well, I think the one of the very important skill which one needs to learn, as we progress in our career is stakeholder management, right? Basically enrolling people around you into conversation and aligning them in doing what is right for you and for the organization, right? So that's a skill which nobody can sort of avoid, not to learn, whether we learn it from PGPMAX or any MBA or from our, the school of hard knuckles, so to say, right? One has to learn it. So I think the very first step in that direction is to making sure that you enroll, or you effectively do the stakeholder management with your organization, right? And making sure that they are aligned to your vision as to why you're doing it, what's in it for you, what's in it for them, and will the work sort of take a backseat because there will be situations which are absolutely unavoidable, right? So you'll have to sort of deal with them irrespective of where you are. Also, I think, my take today is that post-pandemic, that has become a lot easier than what it was pre-pandemic era. Like, when I did the program 2014, 15, it was still, like you had to be in the office kind of thing. Today, you can be anywhere. I mean, you can manage crisis, you can handle situations. It's not that you have to be around in office. So I'm assuming, I'm not from corporate ecosystem anymore. So I don't know what exactly has changed in the corporate ecosystem, post pandemic, but I'm assuming that it's much simpler a conversation from your commitment standpoint, from the organization and you. But nevertheless, it's all about, stakeholder management, managing your, your expectation, your family's expectation, your boss's expectation, your peers' expectation, and maybe your super boss's expectation. You will have no option but to learn it. So might as well learn it and make a use of it in aligning your organization and allowing them to sort of sign up for the program.
Sure. Thank you, Abhishek. How about you, Ritu? Any tips for our attendees for managing the program?
Yeah, so I actually was, I had my own startup at that time. So I didn't have the same challenge of, looking at, I did have a very different challenge on how to manage, which was different, but I didn't have this experience of where I had to go back to the organization and ask, but, I've spoke, just knowing from my batchmates, I think companies are very positive when people are signing up for these courses and they understand that it's self-development and, it's meant for those purposes and it's going to be something in a positive direction. And most organizations are, I think, accommodative, as long as I think whatever a person is doing, they figure it out how they are going to manage that 1 week when they're completely, out of office. I think it takes that. And I would definitely say that, the remote work would definitely make those things much, much simpler when your absence in the office for a week is probably not physically noticed. I'm sure the number of hours that you put in that week, or if some project is going on, you need to be available or you need to be there at a client site. I think important thing is how big is your team when you're not there for, that 1 week. Is there somebody who can step up or who can sort of look at the things that you were looking at? If you need to be physically present or do the client meetings and stuff. The way that I told you that I had planned, and I knew from Bangalore I could not have done this course. I needed to go back and change cities because I had an infrastructure there. Similarly, you need to look at an infrastructure at your office. And I think from your point of view also, you have to assure your organization that, you have the ability to manage both. You have the teams, you have an ecosystem, when you're out for that 1 week that, that you're in touch in the evenings or something, or you're, present for the critical calls in the evening, if at all. But there is somebody, the work does not stop. The deadlines are not missed. That's how I think it depends also on the person. And if you've been, in case of Anant, he just joined the organization, but in case of many others, if you've been in the organization, you've been there, you've been working, people are aware of how you work, who you are as a person. I think that also assures, your bosses or whoever you're reporting to, saying that, this person can manage, right? So I think it's in cases where you're changing. I think it's very challenging in cases where you're in a new job. I would say that will be the most challenging situation you'll face, that you've changed a job and you're also joined a course because, you don't have a background, you're not kind of made your base there. In fact, I remember one person from my batch, his name was Abhishek. He works for the government of India, and this highway project was just coming up, putting tolls on all the national highways. It was a big project taken up by the government. And he suddenly got, he was 2 or 3 months into the course. A, he got a promotion. B, there was a huge project in front of him which needed to be done. He actually dropped out for that 1 year. That's an extreme example I'm giving, but he figured that there is no way he can take on such a challenging task working with government of India. And he was really working with the Minister Nitin Gadkari and all that. And he took that call I'm not in touch with him, so I'm not sure whether he went back to the campus to finish it in the subsequent years. But but that's a very extreme situation. But if something like that happens, you always have the provision of pausing your course. ISB gives you the flexibility to complete the course, join a later batch or something. And I would say that's the safety net, because you can't suddenly, because you're doing the course, quit your job, or if things like this are happening, you pass up and say, I don't want to do it. So you always have those kind of flexibilities as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ritu. So the next question that I have, any of you can take a chance at it. So one of the attendees is asking, how is this program placed versus the other programs by the Ivy League universities in the global context, and in terms of acceptance for the global role, etc. So how is it placed, and when you were doing your research, how did you analyze both the programs and accordingly decide on PGPMAX?
When I was doing my research for this thing, I think, because I was very clear that, I want to do something in India, right? There are other courses from, Harvard and others, who do similar stuff, but you will have to go to Mumbai or some other, it's a mix of online and, some of contact classes where prof will come, they teach in a hotel and things like that, I think that's what it was. I don't know how things are now, but I found ISB more credible and much better. Especially, if you plan to work in India, continue to work in India, I think ISB is the best bet as far as that. Because I was very clear that I don't want to go out. I want to be in India, and ISB was great from that perspective.
Sure, thank you, Anand. Ritu, Abhishek, do you want to take a chance?
Yeah, I think your question was about how does the program stack up against other international programs, right? Yeah. I would say that I did not explore much of international because at that point in time, I was not looking at moving outside of India. So, the perspective wasn't there, global roles, etc. I was only trying to look at something that I can do. As I said, time was a big constraint for me. And, if there were courses in INSEAD and other places where you had to be on the campus in Singapore or France and things like that, I simply didn't have that kind of time. So for me, those courses were out. Coming back to the question of, if somebody has and wants to do global roles, I would say, if you are not changing your organization and you're in the same organization where you want to make a global move, is this course a good fit for that? Absolutely, yes. When you're trying to charter territories outside of India, is this course going to enable you to do that because you're now a pass out of ISB? The answer is yes and no, because, the global scale is very large. It depends on which country you're looking at. What are the kind of universities and programs and education institutions there? But let me tell you, the module where you actually do international immersions, in case of ISB, at that time, both of them were in the US, Kellogg and Wharton. It does give you access to an alumni network in these places. And if you do want to tap into it, it's great, because I did that when I moved to the US, and I actually reached out to a few people. And in fact, I reached out to somebody who had done an exchange program at ISB from US. And I didn't know this person. I just saw on my LinkedIn that, they say you belong to the same alumni network. And in that time I was applying for a job in a very large healthcare company here. And the job actually was, I wanted to know about the company. I was very new. I had it just been 3 months when I had landed here. I was trying to wade my way through, but I think that was so powerful for me that I could reach out to people who didn't know me, who were not my batchmates, but I had access to them. And this person actually introduced me to a person who was hiring for that role. So, and this was a role which was actually advertised on a portal. And I'm sure if I had put my resume in an application, I probably would have not met anybody. So I think there are those things that happen. You get an access to a network, but if you on your own, you sort of want to look at that transition and say, now I have done ISB and will that help me? The answer is no. Within the same organization, yes, because what happens, one of the challenges I faced also when I came here was that somehow what happens is US is a melting pot of all sorts. People come from different countries here, and there is very little knowledge. People have heard of ISB, like if you apply to Pepsi and other places, which I did when I had come in. I was delighted to form you have to actually sign up for their portal. And I think it was nice that there was an ISB as an MBA school there, because there were these drop-down menus where you put up your academics and what you've done. And ISB did figure out there. It does figure out on a few of those companies, which is really nice to see. But what happens is the bulk of people who are working here, who are probably not from India, there are people coming from all over the world. It's very difficult for somebody to understand your education in a different country when they have not been exposed to what are the top B schools there, or even the IITs and other things. So it creates that kind of challenge. And I would advise that if you're looking at making a global move, then don't rely only on this program. It will give you the network, it will give you the wherewithal, but it is not a brand name that will push through your ambition to now become a global manager where you want to apply for new companies. So I hope that answers the question, Smriti.
Yeah, it does. Ritu. Thank you so much. Next question, I have it for Abhishek probably. This is more of a startup thing that somebody has asked. So they are asking that, they're looking to work on their startup opportunity that they're getting. So how can they identify the real opportunities and analyze and identify whether this idea will even work or not? And will this program help me do that?
I think the simple answer, Smriti, to that question is that it probably will not help you. Okay. If you have an idea and you're getting into the program so that you can shape that idea, shaping the idea has got nothing to do with any program on the face of this earth. Whether it's PGPMAX or MB or Harvard or Stanford, right? So you shape the idea when, essentially rubber meets the road, right? It's very easy. I've been in startup. This is my third startup. I started my first startup way back in 2006 when I was 26-year-old. Then I started my second startup when I was 29 almost, right? Then I'm starting today at 41, right? So, so the shaping of the idea has got nothing to do with any MBA program, right? And it's very easy to make program or ideation in your Excel sheets and business plans and say, what, in 3 years I will hit $100 million in ARR, right? Or $5 million in my MRR. It's very easy. You need to spend 40-50 lakh rupees to make those Excel sheets. You should simply go to Y Combinator, download some of the templates, look at some YouTube videos, and then you're good to go. Okay. What you should expect, however, from an ideation, from a startup standpoint, when you run a startup, especially when you're chief everything officer like I am, right? Right from the toilet paper all the way to the board meetings, right? You have to manage everything, right? There's no EA to book your tickets. There's no corner office to feel happy about. You're on your own, okay? And it's very lonely, okay? So even though this is my third startup, I can tell you, I started this with two of my friends. One of my CTO and I go back some 23 years. My CEO and I go back some 9 years, right? The reason why I started it, in my 40s is because I wanted to spend time with my friends and the people I like and shape something up, right? So do spend time, with your friends. If you do decide to join the program, considering that it possibly might not help you in shaping up the idea per se, but you'll get bunch of people who are at the same wavelength, same chemistry. Somebody is a finance expert, somebody is an operation expert, somebody is a marketing expert, somebody is a corporate dev expert, somebody is possibly an M&A. So it gives you a holistic view of what essentially goes behind the scene in shaping up, so to say, your idea, or even helping you raise money for that matter. But don't join any program because with an expectation that I have an idea and I will do a program, and you know what, that idea will shape up into $1 billion story in 3 years. No, this is not going to happen.
Sure. Thank you, Abhishek. That was a great piece of advice from you. The next question that I have, probably Ritu, you would be the best person to answer that. So, what makes PGPMAX a great program for women, and how does it equip them to have a seat at the leadership table?
Okay. I think it equips you by the way of what I talked about earlier. It gives you a lot of exposure to many different things. It gives you an exposure to, to the technicalities of different, like I said, different divisions, like different functions. I learned a lot about, as I said, operations, supply chain, finance, and that itself sort of broadens your horizon to understand, how a business works and not just your function, right? Which typically happens in organizations. And I think with that exposure and with the fact that, you learn a lot about different industries, different perspectives and point of views of different people. And that learning is very, very rich. And that simply put together, and that's the transformation I keep, when somebody talks to me about ROI or, how you sort of go through life post an MBA, I think it all depends on what you become post that, how you start thinking, how you start looking at things. And I think whether men or women, I would say that, I wouldn't say the paths are different. I would just say that, it kind of changes you as a person. It changes your perspectives. And let me tell you, it also changes you. We talked about making time. We talked about stakeholder, management. And these are all things that you require at a leadership level. You are expected to be good at, what your skill sets are, whether you're from finance, whether you're from marketing, or whether, you're from HR. But, when you want to grow, I think it's people management, it's your leadership skills that sort of start counting in. And I think those skill sets are honed at, at places like these where, you're actually dealing with rapid change, a lot of people, a lot of inputs coming your way. You're also trying to manage home, personal lives, and your work deadlines, etc. And, the more of that you manage, the more it keeps changing you. And you won't realize that the person who went in 15 months back in that program and who comes out is already a different person, right? The way you would talk, the things that you would talk about, or as an interest, the things that you start reading about or taking interest in, because it suddenly start making more sense to you, right? For me, I think I loved the fact that, there were so many global case studies that we went through, and, and I was somebody who was not privy to what's happening in the technology world at all. I mean, I knew the technology company, but, really what's really happening in that world, and technology now itself is such a big industry. I started taking a big interest in that. Every time that I would pick up the Economic Times, things that I would skip were now things that interested me. And, it was really that worldview that starts shaping you as a person, that starts, you start to conduct yourself in a different way. Also, I think, people who want to get on to the next level, I would say, there's not only the ambition that you need, but there is goal setting, there is how you go about it, there's the planning part of it. And I think when you're doing this program, those are inherently the traits you require to survive this program and to be able to do it, given that, time is always a constraint. And I think because it changes you, that's the way you start moving in your general life as well. I mean, I'm really putting it in a very broad way. So, I would not say how does it help women or men. I would say that it helps everybody equally. And if you're able to do that change within yourself, that's how, you start doing things differently. That's how the world starts looking at you differently. I mean, you can say, I mean, in this organization, this is, okay, this is what I want to do next. And you will see that the way you were planning about it, you were going about it earlier, 2 years back or a year and a half back, would be very different from how you do it now.
Sure. Thank you, Ritu. And I hope the women participants today do take a cue from what you just said. Next question, I think Anant would be the most appropriate person to answer that. So Anant, Vibhuti is asking that once you continue in the same organization or once you change the organization, where did you find the most value, like changing the job or the company or continuing with the same organization?
Oh, man, I think it's hard to say that simply because, I was in the transition period when I joined. I mean, I had got an offer when I was leaving Wipro and I joined Intel. Um, I mean, I can tell you that it really helped in my new company. So, um, see, the MBA per se, right? I mean, I don't think that, if you're in an organization, you do an MBA, suddenly they want to promote you to something different, right? And I think, I think that is, I don't think people should have that expectation, right? I mean, if you're doing an MBA just for the sake of, getting a different role or doing something different, right? I mean, I don't think you should do an MBA, right? I mean, there are other ways to do that, right? So the idea is that people, when you start doing an MBA, you have a different outlook. Your output is completely different. You have different perspectives, right? And you can accomplish different things, right? I mean, that gives you an opportunity to pitch for something better, right? Again, it doesn't come by itself. You need to work towards it. You need to focus on. You need to be very clear on what you want to do, and then do this. Right? I mean, I think that's how MBA helps, right? And MBA, the PGPMAX and ISB will give you all the tools necessary. How do you deploy the tools? How do you use those tools? How do you use those content? It is completely left to the individual what he wants to make out of it, right? So if people want to simply, change their career, do something different, right? I mean, when I did, I'm not sure what is it now, right? They don't even offer you, placements, right? I mean, so doing an MBA for the sake of, just going to a different company or a thing, this is a very bad idea.
Sure. Thank you, Anand, for helping us with that. So the next question, probably all three of you could share your perspectives on, is did you get a chance to implement things that you learned during the course, and how did you manage to do that? Like, did you take any specific statistical models or any things that you learned during the program? So how did you do that? Probably you can start with Ritu.
I can't remember specifically that I took a model or something that we had learned and exactly applied it. As I said, it's always been what you see as what others have done in other industries, whether through case studies or through peer learning, when you're trying to solve those cases or you're having your discussions and you realize it's a different perspective. So I think people have tried to do that, gone back and tried to apply some some of the models that they studied, but I don't think it's exactly applicable in that way. What you could do is, if you're going through a situation or there's a business challenge that you're trying to solve, you can always start looking at it you start looking at it in a different way. I know of people who have actually taken helps of professors who were there, and they try to bring those cases, those situations to the classroom, and we have tried to apply those fundamentals to those situations to then discuss it or to kind of dissect the situation. But I specifically, in my case, haven't gone back and said, there is a particular model I've learned and this is what I could apply. I think I always go back to my, what happens is when you're going through a situation in work life, something is stored in your mind somewhere that you did, and it's not a case study, it's not a model. You kind of start collecting from your memory different perspectives that you have probably gone through, and you say, okay, this can be applied to that situation. Maybe that happens subconsciously, but not an exact modeling of, I've not done it personally.
Sure. Thank you, Ritu. Abhishek, would you like to help us with this question? Like, how did you get a chance to implement things that you learned during the course?
Okay. So, I think I 100% agree with, Ritu here. I don't remember ever sort of, implementing a solution because I sort of studied a given case study or any mathematical modeling. I really don't remember anything like that, right? In my career progression. What I think the way I look at it, right, is that you don't have to sort of solve every single problem which comes your way, right? Like, and Ritu can sort of relate with it as an entrepreneur. And we deal with, God knows how many problems every single day, right? And you are the only one to solve it. The way I look at it is that, you have people in your network who are expert in, even handling a given situation, whether it's a finance related problem. For example, simple question like, when you're incorporating a company, do you incorporate it in Singapore or make a Delaware C Corp or make an India entity, right? Has like a huge implications on how the organization will shape up. And I'm taking an entrepreneurial example, when can definitely take a corporate example, right? Now, I don't think any case study or any methodology or any statistical model will essentially answer that question. However, this question will get answered if you speak with your peers, your people in your network who have been through this situation, who know plus and minus of advantages and disadvantages of what should you do in a given situation, right? So that's really the way I look at it. I don't think it has got anything to do with anything academic, and suddenly you feeling very enlightened that you sort of studied that academic model which you can sort of implement in your day-to-day life. Secondly, at least in my experience, and I'm sure Anant and Ritu will sort of resonate with this, is that the fact that what you study in any MBA program, it's not just about PGPMAX, whether it's Harvard, Stanford, INSEAD, what have you, right? The real world problem statements are very different from any academic sort of exercise you must have done, right? So I'll give you a very simple example. I still remember in the class, we were discussing valuation, right? And all the case studies we were doing were essentially very pragmatic, traditional sort of discounted cash flow based, valuations. In my startup ecosystem, I've never seen anybody using DCF for any valuation, like at least in the internet domain. I don't know how other sectors operate, and I'm a hardcore internet entrepreneur. I have never met any private equity or venture capitalist or an investment banker who talks about DCF at all, right? None, zero. And I deal with God knows how many VCs and PE players and investment bankers, right? So it's not that you have studied something in one of the case study or a book or something, and suddenly you are enlightened to sort of handling that situation in a practical sort of scenario. It does give you a sort of armor in a way to deal with it in your own unique way, but that I don't think that can be corroborated to any sort of academic modeling or book or case study, at least not in my case.
Sure. Thank you, Abhishek. Over to you, Anand.
I mean, as Ritu and Abhishek said, no, man, I think, it's not as if, you're going to do everything, that you learned. I mean, I don't even remember what I learned. Okay, that to be fair, right? But it's largely what you really do is it's actually largely subconscious, right? Two things happen. One, you have used to all those terms that are used in operations, finance, right? I mean, when I see DCF or NPV in a this thing, you know what it means, right? That's it. I mean, I think high level stuff. Apart from that, I know whom to call to get more information about it. I mean, those two things is what you really do, right? One, you're not scared about all the terms that are thrown at you, be it operation, finance, HR, and this thing, right? I mean, you're not new to it. You're familiar subconsciously. It's all there somewhere. You have discussed this in various contexts in your case study and other, right? So you are familiar with it, and I know whom to call, right? I mean, I've done whenever I have a problem, right? I call my friends, I call profs, and we have done a lot. I have done a lot of with profs, right? I mean, for example, Raj Srivastava, we do work a lot of stuff in many of the marketing and other stuff, because I know he's one of the great guys on innovation marketing, right? And we run to him whenever I have some product, right? So that is what it really helps you. And I don't think, uh, I have ever used anything, that I've actually learned. But I know whom to go to, right? To ensure that, to get the best guys who can help me with, a particular product.
Thank you, Anand. The next question, again, it's a very generic question that I would like to have input from all of you is, what value do you see in the executive courses in the current times? So probably Ritu, you can start off.
Would you repeat that? I didn't get the question.
So what value do you see in the executive courses in the current times?
I think the value is self-growth, I would say, self-learning, self-growth, and how that enables you to take you to the, on your journey where you've set your goals, where you want to reach. So the executive programs really come in, I think, at a point where you have a lot of experience. And I think you feel the need to, you feel that there are things that you don't know, or you feel that you don't have the skill sets to go on to the next destination where you want to go on to. I think the executive programs are really, really good to sort of help with that. I think I heard somebody say in the beginning that they have done an MBA in 19 years back or something. There was one question there, and the person was already considering. I think it refreshes a lot of things. I think a lot of things change in business. There's a lot of new things that are happening around the world. Not only in this executive program, anything that you pick up, I think once you identify what your goal is, you pick up anything, I think it aids you with the right skill sets, tools, and the right mindset to sort of go on that journey. And that's where the executive programs are super useful.
Sure, thank you. Abhishek, Anand, would you like to answer?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the value depends on what they're expecting out of this. Right? I mean, it's different to different people. Their scenarios, situations are different, right? So, if you feel a need for you to be, and if you think that you need something more to really understand, help your career, I think maybe you should go for it. Provided you have the time, you can spare the time and also the resources required to do this, right? So. It's a more situation by situation and personal this thing, right? Of value, what people derive out of it. But overall, these programs tend to be really good. Provided if you're very clear of what you want to get out of it.
Sure. Abhishek, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So I think the simple answer, at least from my standpoint, is that any executive course, right? You will even consider it if you're hungry to grow in your career. If you're not hungry, you'll not even consider executive program, right? Because of obviously the career stage and so on. And in my experience, the best learning, again, and I keep sort of repeating this, right? So is to connect with people and learn from them, really. So that's the value that, a lot of people say that, it's almost impossible to make friends, when you're in your 40s or late 30s or 50s or something. Not true, right? You'll make friends and they are just a call away, and you need something or need any help, or they need anything from you, they need any help, you're available. You need any help, they are available. That is the value. I don't think there's any other value which one can sort of quantify and measure and say, hey, like ROI question, right, which we were discussing. That's the value. I don't, at least in my mind, there is possibly no other value. That really is the value.
Thank you, Abhishek, for that. So I have Vibhuti asking one question that since you talk a lot about peer group learning and networking, how would you compare the learning from peers from this program vis-a-vis a professional course that you would have taken 13 to 14 years back at the start of your career? Oh, yeah.
Can I answer that question?
Yeah.
So, I would say it adds on to that, right? People that you start with at when you are in your early academic journey, those friendships, that network is great. What happens is everybody's taken a certain journey in the 10, 15 years or whenever you try, you're considering doing an executive course. At that time, your circumstances, your situation, how far you've reached, what you're doing would be very different than what you would have done when you started your professional journey. And I think it helps to sort of build the kind of networks that you would want to build at this stage in your career. I would say it only adds on to what you already have. It gives you an access to a huge alumni network, number of people, professors also, who you can reach out to. So I think it's definitely, it adds to that completely. And if you compare that versus somebody else who doesn't have those kind of networks, you're definitely better off,
Sure. Thank you for answering that. Anand, Abhishek, would you like to add on to it?
I mean, I think the huge factor here, something that you've done 13, 14 years back to now would typically be, your experience, right? I mean, I think you've gone through a lot of stuff, seen something for yourself, right? And after doing something on your own, right, when you come back and look at what are the other ways of doing things, what are the other things to do, right? I mean, I think that sort of a learning is much better, simply because you have certain things, right? You can relate to what you have done, how you have done it, right? What you're doing, right? And how you could do it better. I think that sort of a learning is better, when it comes to exec. And that's what is unique about exec MBA, right? You have the experience, you have done all this in your life, most of the stuff that I've done is without even knowing why I'm doing some of those stuff, right? I mean, this particular gives you some amount of background, theoretical background of why you're doing something and why they are done, and compare with all the other options that might be available, right? So I think it's a completely different thing, when you do after going through a 13, 14 years of corporate experience or professional experience.
Sure. Thank you, Anand. So the next question that I have is, one of the attendees is at the cusp of a senior leadership role. In fact, he's more towards the middle management and is looking to transition towards the senior executive role. And since the PGPMAX program is more targeted for the senior leadership, how will this course be beneficial, considering the less experience in the senior profile that he has, and he has around 15 years of work experience overall? Now, Abhishek, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I'll try and give a shot at it. Well, see, the way I see it is that, what's we, in our mind, I think we classify our career journey into, early stage, like, typically we do for startups, right? Early stage startup, growth stage startup, whatever. So similarly, we do it in our mind, right? From a career progression standpoint, right? Like it's been 3 years, so I'm early, and I'm 10 years, maybe I'm mid, and I'm 15 years and so on. I'm a senior, or at least we compare with our peers and we call ourselves, or them senior, myself senior, whatever, what have you, right? I don't think it matters, frankly. It doesn't matter, right? So what matters is that, let's try and take a step back and understand what is senior management, right? What is that senior management does, which middle management, in whatever frame of reference we have in our mind, essentially, how it differs, right? I think there are only 3 things which matter, right? First and foremost, senior management essentially set the vision. They don't do much, frankly speaking. Most of us are busy meeting people. We take decisions, right? Senior management it's not that you have to learn macros and apply them in Excel sheet. I don't even know, even after PGPMAX, I don't know, by the way, how to apply, macros in an Excel sheet. You give me a macro full of Excel sheet, I can't decipher it, but doesn't matter, right? Because I have people who will decipher it for me, and they would expect me to sort of take a decision, right? So that's one thing which a senior management essentially does. Second is stakeholder management. You have to manage your board, right? You have to manage your CEO. You have to manage, your president in North America and your partner in Japan, and right. So what is this, right? It's all stakeholder management, right? what is that they are expecting from you, what is that you are expecting from them, and how do you sort of align that? That's the second thing which senior management does, right? And third thing is that, which is extension of the first point, right? You have to take sometimes tough decisions, right? Which is expected of you. What we call as, doing the right thing, right? Because it sounds very easy, but it's not, right? A lot of time, what is right for the organization may not be right for the employees, and what's right for the employees may not be right for the organization, right? So which way are you leaning? How do you balance it? That's it. Or kuch nahi hai. It's not that complicated, really, right? How does any program help you with that? Well, through case studies or what have you, you realize that how does different set of people and different set of given situation took, decisions or handled given situation, which sits into this, framework, so to say. Or some of your peer over a beer, when you're sitting in Hyderabad, in Banjara Hill, one of the, terrace gardens, and you ended up sort of having this discussion as to, by tumne kya kiya or humne kya kiya, right? So that discussion essentially sort of shapes up, your decision framework, so to say. Apart from that, there's nothing much to it. It's a frame of reference we use: early stage, mid stage, senior, this, that. It doesn't matter really, right? Because sometimes even as a part of middle management, you're supposed to take decisions or do certain things which essentially, you would expect to sort of do when 5 years hence or something, right? So you can't have this barometer or this frame of reference to say middle management, senior management. Doesn't matter. It's not about skills. It's all about attitude and frame of mind, so that you do the right thing when the time expects you to take the decision and do the right thing. That's it.
Thank you, Abhishek. So just one last question before we end the session. So this is a generic question, and probably I would like all three of you to answer that. How did PGPMAX bring in change in overall personality, professional and personal both? Maybe we can start with Anand this time.
I think the first of all is the overall confidence, that you basically, work with. Nothing is new for you, right? You know whom to reach when you have this thing, right? And second thing is, you speak that lingo, right? So personally for me, I think for me, there is no fear at this point. If you want to reach somebody, I know exactly what is the connect that I'm going to use, right? Who can help me reach them, right? What I can do, what do you need to talk, because you're pretty conversant with many of the stuff that people can talk about, right? So for me personally, it has been a great experience, and overall, I'm much confident than what I've been before going through PGPMAX.
Sure. Thank you, Anand. Ritu, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think it allows you to let go of your inhibition. You always keep thinking there are things that you don't know. And, many things are in our mind. I think when people are embarking on this journey to do a mid-career executive course, they already know a lot. They are already solving business problems. They're already executing. They're already handling teams. They're already doing stakeholder management. I think what happens is when you look at others, you sometimes start feeling that they know the lingo, and that lingo translates to thinking that they are smarter, they're better, they're more leader-like than you are. And what a course like this does is, because it exposes you to many things, including the language itself, or sometimes the business models. And then, it's not only a language, it's not the MBA jargon that I'm talking about. It's how really businesses are looked at, what are some of the financial terms, when you're sitting in a room, where there are people who are different than you, who are handling different functions, or you're sitting on a table with senior leaders. Are you able to understand that conversation? Are you able to understand when things are being analyzed? And, I think it starts it gives you that worldview, and therefore it lets go of those fears in your mind. So somebody asked me a question earlier, how does it help women to find a seat at the table? It's your own confidence. It's your own dropping of your own inhibitions. It's telling yourself that now you know, and there's nothing that holds you from being at that table, because now you know, and you make your journey accordingly. And I actually coach and mentor people. I don't want to talk about it here, but most of the things that I see are in the mind. The confidence or no confidence is in the mind. But yes, if there is no confidence or low confidence, just giving a little exposure to the right things makes a huge difference. We are not doing this MBA at the beginning of our career where you actually don't know many things, but you know what, that time you're fearless. And what changes as you go through life is you start having these boundaries around yourself, and you say, but I don't know this, but I can't talk that language. So that's the personality change that it helps you make. That's the transition that it helps you make. You start thinking differently, and that transformation comes through your demeanor, how you talk, how you conduct yourself, and all of those changes happen because your mind has changed. You've been exposed to many more things, and therefore you are a different person.
Thank you, Ritu, for answering that. Abhishek, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, Smriti. Well, I think the way, at least my experience has been that when you join the program, you'll meet some of the smartest bunch of people. I still remember my orientation, and I used to think, yaar, kahan aa gaya? How will I survive? Right amongst these bunch of people who are very, very smart. But most of it, what we don't realize perhaps is that all of us bring something to the table, right? So I trust the PGPMAX admission committee to basically make the right choice, right? So the mix, right? We may realize it, we may not realize it, but a month and a half down the line, I still remember, and I'm sure Ritu and Anand can relate with it. We were sitting in the infinity pool in the EH area, right? And you sort of, you realize that, hey, well, the fact really is that I also bring something to the table, right? Like I'm learning from them, they have also learned from me, right? Like they are shaping my personality in a way, I am also shaping their personality, right? Their decision framework, their way of looking things, right? I still remember multiple conversations, not once or twice, like over the course of 15 months. People wanted to know, what is entrepreneurship all about? What does it take to start? And start was not, it was not jazzy a word, which is possibly today. And I'm talking about, end of 2013, beginning of 2014, right? So people used to wonder, and then I suddenly realized that, what, hey, this is something which I bring to the table, like, and I am also sort of adding to their learning experience. And that's how personality gets formed, it gets shaped up. All of us sort of in the batch, whether it's TA, whether it's staff, whether it's professors, whether it's your peers in the class, all of us contribute something or the other to each other, which possibly we don't realize, then, and possibly we'll never realize. I can't say that this part of me is because of this experience or this conversation, but somewhere it did sort of shape me. You will never realize it. It's all about exposing yourself to it and having a trust in yourself that, I also bring something to the table, and I will also take away something from it, and I will let others also take away a piece of me or a soul of me, whichever way you put it.
Thank you, Abhishek, for answering that. And with this, we come towards the end of the session. In fact, we've already shot up by 5 minutes, so not taking much of your time. I would like to thank Ritu, Abhishek, and Anand, for answering all the queries that our attendees had, and probably this would have helped them take a decision about doing a program or not. And attendees, if you do have any further questions about the program, or if you would want to connect to any of our alums today here, you can reach out to us, and the alums would be happy to answer your queries on a one-to-one basis. So do reach out to us in case you have any further queries. And thank you for attending the session today. So we have a short survey before you end the webinar or leave the webinar. I would request you to take that survey to help us make this kind of sessions that we have from the admissions team a more interactive one, and would help you in your decision making as well. And thank you, alums, today for having a wonderful session. I thoroughly enjoyed, speaking to all of you and getting to know you and the journey better in this session. Thank you, Ritu, Abhishek, and Anand. Look forward to speaking to all of you again.
Thank you. All the best for
Thank
all the
you.
participants.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
And have a
everyone. All the
great
very
evening.
best. Take care. Bye-bye.